Today I want to talk about CIA and why I think that the CIA is going to go extinct. Uh, I like this topic of extinction, why some animals, some kinds of religions, some kind of philosophies or political systems, they go extinct. You read about them in history, and that's it. There has been a few political systems that have gone completely extinct, and when I study the reasons behind these extinctions, it kind of gives me a broader view of what's going to happen with the ones that we have now, and they are due to go extinct. Well, if you watch a lot of the videos, there is hardly any group or any kinds of political party or any kind of foreigner or foreign country or organization or any significant politicians anywhere that likes CIA or thinks they're something to have around. Everywhere you look at, you can start with Trump. He went around and he was talking about how CIA had killed JFK. I was kind of concerned that hey, something like this could happen to me. I'm another president, and then you could go down and on about commentators like Catherine Austin Fitz talks about the deep state is stealing $21 trillion of American people's money, and we don't know where this money went into space, deep space programs or secret agendas, or then you can move on to uh, to foreigners, foreign countries that their population know that their government in the past, the ones that they elected, had been overthrown or by CIA, or you could even talk about countries that have recently gotten rid of CIA, like Venezuela and other leftist countries. They just don't like this organization. They come in, they pay off thugs, and they start demonstrations or do political assassinations. Go look around in any kind of media and see anybody thinks well of CIA. Well, I was reading some Iranian media, and about a little while ago, about a couple of months ago, that there was a large bust of CIA-sponsored Iranians that CIA had paid them off, and they put them in different positions. And the Iranian secret police, by the way, they called them Savama, busted them, and they said that we're gonna execute 10 of them, and the other 7, well, they're gonna sit in prison. I don't know, maybe they'll execute them later. But then, just a couple of days ago, I read another article that they had arrested 8 people that were funneling money and starting riots. Who wants these people? There is reasons for extinctions when an organization or a political entity or the mafioso, they do too much damage, and everybody knows it, and there is a history, and everybody doesn't want them around, doesn't want to see them, doesn't want to know about them. Then something else happens. In the Sufi circles, They have expression goes like this. ناگهان خبر آوردند که خواجه مرد. Suddenly they brought news that Pompeo has died. Well, the word Khaja means like somebody who's like very significant, but he's not doesn't have very good moral character. He's like suddenly they brought news that Bolton has had a massive heart attack. Well, I don't like new cons either. I could talk about the extinction of new cons. But there is another war that the United States is losing, and this is the war of financing street thugs and unleashing them on governments that the U.S. doesn't like Venezuela, Iran, China, in Hong Kong, or giving support to anybody that they don't like, handing out checks to assassins and spies. Well, I put up a picture of Giuliani. He was having a conference, or he had the pictures of, I think, Rajavi's wife. She's like one of the heads of a terrorist organization that kills Iranians, Mujahideen Khalq, and they had also killed hundreds of Iranian senators, lawmakers, and the government has been after them, and every time they catch them, they just execute them because they're just too vicious an organization. Well, they had existed a long time ago at the Shah's time, and the way they started is that the founders of this organization, which is a totally terrorist organization, and they found out who the CIA agents who were installing listening posts in Iran against the Soviets. I don't know how they had found out. They probably had contact with the Soviets. So, and they killed them. They killed. This is how they started. They used to go around and attack Iran banks, export banks, Sadarat, Bank of Sadarat. That's how they used to finance themselves, is attacking these banks and grabbing all the money and then buying weapons or importing it. And they had tried to make bases in rural areas like Che Guevara. And then most Iranians, even at the time of revolution when I was there for a brief visit in the summer, they didn't think too badly of MKO or Mujahideen. But then my brother was saying that this group, I don't think Khomeini likes them. They are unruly and they're gonna do stuff. And this is exactly what happened. After I left, in about a year or so later, I think a couple of years later, they blew up the Iranian Majlis because they were unhappy with the government. And the Iranian government at the time had a huge following, has a lot of support. So the government, Khomeini, turned against them and they grabbed anybody of them that they could and executed a lot of them. The rest of them, they ran to Iraq and they were in a camp. They call them Ashraf camp. And the camp was kind of sanctioned or supported by Saddam Hussein. So they were basically, they had gone extinct even after for many years, but they kind of hang on to existence using these very obnoxious foreign governments that were totally anti-Iranian. Saddam was, and then now some of them have migrated to West, and they go find people like Giuliani and Pompeo to give him money. They're like Shahis. Shahis do something similar, but they don't have any support or any personnel anywhere, even in Iraq. And what they do is give lip support. Oh, we're gonna do this and that, and then the stupid CIA gives them money. Basically, trying to construct an ISIS for Iran. Well, the another another thing that happened was that every once in a while some UAE or Wahhabi group gives money to terrorists, and they come around, either blow up some Iranians or a building inside Iran and kill a bunch of people. Or the last one I saw was they had come to Iranian border on the Pakistani side and blew themselves up, and then like 30 border guards get killed. Well, after that, there was a massive demonstrations. I haven't seen anything like that against these guys, against Wahhabis, and many military commanders came out and they said they had to stop these guys 3-4 times, but it wasn't working anymore. So they said that we control our country, but in other countries like United States or Wahhabi places like Saudi Arabia or UAE or Qatar, there is the terrorists themselves or the Khalifa or the government, and they give money and they do this stuff, and until we hit them inside their own country, deep inside their own country, then these attacks will not stop, which is exactly what happened. There was a huge attack on Saudi oil infrastructure. They took 5 million barrels of oil that they were producing off the market in one attack. Well, there has been many attacks by Yemenis. They are kind of loosely related or supported by Iran. But then these attacks and counterattacks, they continue. But also another war that the United States is losing, which is the war through CIA, because they have done so many coups d'etats and so many secret assassinations that the world totally knows about these people. Many governments, they have very good intelligence services. I read that the Russians were going around in Venezuela and they were following the CIA operatives, and they were taking pictures who they had given money to, and then unleashing the government on them. I guess there is a satellite that the Russians use and share the intelligence with the Syrians and the Iranians, and there is reasons to believe that that CIA and the stuff it does and the army of assassins, that these groups are going extinct because the world knows about them and nobody wants them around. Nobody. It's like they did a few things, for example, in Venezuela, and then the government didn't go along with it. The military didn't go along with it. The people, they didn't go along with it, and the whole thing became silent in the media. It's just like many countries, they're disconnecting from this network, Western networks, whatever it might be. It might be money, or might be the banking system, or might be the military intelligence systems. They are just yanking them off of the grid that these guys have built, and this thing is shrinking. Well, for an organization, for deep state, to continue to survive, I mean, any kind of company, they should have some support, somebody likes them. But even in the United States, nobody likes them, and everybody is fearful and suspicious of them. Even Americans themselves or their politicians are intimidated by these guys. But I don't know. Looking at past extinctions, I think that these guys are on the roll. They're going on the conveyor belt. Conveyor belt. That's a really nice analogy. But another thing that I think it has already gone extinct, except that many Americans they don't know it. Is American capitalism has gone extinct. Well, you should kind of listen to Kaiser report and his analogy with the mortician and formaldehyde. You know, the mortician is saying, I don't know how much, as much formaldehyde I'll inject into this corpse. The corpse doesn't move. Only the leg moves a little bit. Well, I think that American capitalism really died in 2007, 2008. And what we have is really monetary policy. Well, actually, when a corpse dies, when a guy dies or a person dies, the corpse, for a while, the beards and the hair keep growing, you know. That's an effect, because these cells, they don't die. The skin cells, they don't die right away. It takes some time. They still feast on what's left of the body, but the rest of the body is going to expire. Well, one of the things that happens to dead people, if they are left in the outside, the different parts of the body start to rot, and each one of them is doing something else on its own. So the leg does something, the lungs they're going bad another way. It's just like the American government and many of their companies or institutions, they're all singing a different song, which is just like a dead body. Well, the fall from grace for this place would be the most disgraceful of any empire that has fallen, because everything is so centralized and a central bank gives them money to do. None of their companies or institutions, they produce wealth or produce prosperity. They're all recipient of a check from somewhere. So when the things go bad, it will become real criminal kind of enterprises, which many of them, I don't know, after the fall of the Soviets, what kind of mafia took over. Well, it will be some time before mafia boss emerges. But I think that another thing that the Americans are very susceptible to is they're gonna have a coup d'etat or civil war, and they will settle things very unpeacefully. And I have very low opinion of Americans and their government. I think that they're very provincial. That's a code word for stupid, and think very highly of themselves. They're very ultra-nationalists, like Wahhabis, and you hear even their most off-grid kind of commentators, they're singing the praise of this government and this society, and even though they know everything has gone bad, they have these huge blinders for nationalism, and they can't accept that. They're looking for ways to resuscitate the corpse, you know. with formaldehyde or something, and I think that things will become a lot more violent. Uh, Another thing that I think is going to go extinct is the U.S. military. It hasn't won a war forever, and their politicians, they go around. Well, they have ruined several Muslim countries, and their politicians go around looking for other places they could bomb. So I think that I talked about this in 2020 psychic predictions, that there will come North Korean or Chinese kind of counterattack will show the Americans and their government and the world that their military is a bunch of shit, and they can get retaliated on, or they're gonna get attacked. They're gonna with weapons that they can't do anything about. This is another kind of extinction that's gonna happen. Well, I had a video was called Extinction Events, and this is well, there is other forms of extinction. I talked about in a video was called Why American Companies Are Dying, and many American companies, they don't produce any kind of wealth. They cause nothing but trouble. They go and borrow all this money. They're heavily indebted, leveraged, and they buy their own stock. They're into gambling, really, and derivatives, and where that's going to go, God knows. Well, I talked about this in another video called Deflationary Collapse, when the investors and the world, they realize these beautiful American treasuries and bonds and junk bonds and US dollar, they're a bunch of shit, and they will reprice all of these in relative to their usefulness to China, their usefulness to Bahrain, their usefulness to whoever. Okay, that's when the market, the bigger market, comes in and says, okay, how valuable is this thing to me? What is left of this Western system that I could do a little business with? Something like that. Then there is the demographic extinction that's going to happen. Because, for example, when you flood a society with so much easy money, the people, they don't want to struggle to work. They all become drug addicts. Or I think that there's an extinction event is going to happen to whites, to white population. But the women usually just go spread it another place. So there's gonna be a lot of mixed kids. I talked about this in a video I had. It was called Our Non-Anglo Progenies and Futures. Well, for God, 50 years, the time it takes for a couple to get together, to have kids, the kids to grow up and move on, and for that couple not to be a couple that generates future generation. 50 years is a long time for these people, but for God, for nature, 50 years is not even a millisecond, because the universe has infinite life, and when a society becomes very corrupted and they lose those moral grounds or values, all those hungers that motivate society to procreate, to create the new things. When the society has been become impotent in that sense, then this is an extinction event, but it's not happening like within a year or two or three or 10, like CIA going out of fashion. But it's happening on a 50-year span or a 100-year span. But this is nothing to God. It's nothing in our history. We should look at that because most people are used to processes that are happening with something that is perceptible to them in human terms, but it doesn't have to be like that. The nature doesn't have to listen to us. Well, uh, there is a verse in Quran. It says so many states, so many populations that were corrupt and oppressive that we destroyed, and out of them, like from their progenies, we brought other nations that they became they inherited the earth. Well, there is another verse. It goes like this: "My righteous servants will inherit the earth." People who are they're Iranian. They're socialists like Russian and Chinese. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna have another video. It's called "Why Capitalism Sucks and Mixed Economies Are Better." Thank you.